Good morning, Big Ten football fans. Welcome back to another edition of the Big Ten Morning Minutes. I'm your host, Michael Chen. It is January 11th, 2019. With the early signing period, it's changed a lot of things in the college football landscape, especially the way that teams replace and hire new coaches. And due to the fact that the majority of prospects have been signing early, the speed process of hiring these coaches has gone very, very quickly. As you know, you're looking at 80% of prospects are signing in that early time period. So the majority of prospects already know where their coaches are, where they're being. So with that in mind, lots of changes happen during this period now between the bowl games, between the final signing day and the first Wednesday of February. So lots to talk about here on the moves for coaches. As University of Michigan went into Alabama and they got their offensive coordinator, wide receivers coach Josh Gaddis. He will do those roles at Michigan. I think this is a good get for Michigan. They've got a lot of good skill players that they need to get more out of, such as Donovan's People-Jones and Chris Evans. So I like this move for Michigan. They need to get a little bit more vertical with their passing game. Their ground and pound, that just doesn't work too much anymore, as you're going to have to score a little bit more. And I think Jim Harbaugh has made that transition, and I really like this hire for them. I think this is going in the right direction. They also got a chance to interview Boston College defensive coordinator Anthony Campanale. Campanale is a very good coach. He's an up-and-comer as well, just like Gaddis. And I see that, obviously they're trying to replace the two coaches that deferred from Ohio State to Ohio State, and that was kind of rough. Kind of a kick in the nuts to them, as Al Washington and Greg Mattison a few days ago went from Ann Arbor to Columbus. So they're trying to replace some coaches there. So I like the idea of where they're going. Boston College typically has pretty solid defenses, so I like this idea here. Ohio State made some moves as well, as they decided that they're going to retain running back coach Tony Alford, while they are hiring Maryland's Matt Barnes. He was their special teams coach. He's going to be a special teams defensive back coach. Also, they have released Taver Johnson and quarterback Tate Martell, who made some comments prior to the transfer, the official transfer that was made earlier this week, he's going to get in that transfer pool. I mean, there are a lot of players that would feel a little slighted, as you're the incumbent quarterback, and obviously you go out and you go get a very, very good transfer in Justin Fields, and he made some comments about potentially staying and not giving this fight up very easily. But it's it doesn't necessarily mean that Martell's going to transfer. I think he's just going to check out his options, and we'll see how that goes. So we'll definitely be monitoring that. Most likely he won't be able to get a grant to play immediately, so he would have to sit out a season if he were to transfer from Ohio State. So we'll obviously monitor that one. Iowa defensive lineman Garrett Jansen also is going into a transfer pool. However, he's going to be a graduate transfer, so he will have eligibility immediately. Looking like Jalen Hurts, another transfer, will be visiting Maryland this weekend. There's definitely some smoke to that fire as whether he will do that. Obviously, Mike Locksley, who was a former offensive coordinator at Alabama, taking the head position job there is obviously a little bit enticing for Hurts, as he would have a good relationship with Locksley and understand what he's looking for out of his offense. So I think that is a nice little boon there. So we'll see what ends up happening as if Hurts actually ends up visiting this past weekend. Michigan State had a lot of movement on their coaching within their coaching ranks. Not necessarily getting rid of people or adding people, but majority just moving people around. Dave Warner will no longer call the plays, as they're going to look at Brad Salem to take over these duties. Mark Stanton is now working with the tight ends and special teams. Jim Bowman's going back to an original position that he coached previously at the offensive line. And then Don Treadwell's going to take over the wide receiver duties. So not necessarily a firing, but maybe just a movement around, and some new ideas being able to be had with Mark D'Antonio and his staff, because obviously watching this year the offense just didn't work, and I think that moves had to be made. Mark D'Antonio is a very loyal coach, so him actually going out and not necessarily changing it, but just changing roles, that's D'Antonio style, as opposed to blowing everything up. So look for Michigan State to try and get some explosive plays and some movement on the offensive side, which is obviously what they were lacking this year. A good defense, but not nearly quite enough offense to compete in those big-time games. So I do like some of those moves by Mark D'Antonio, but again, sometimes it's nice to have a new voice, and we'll see how this all works out for the Spartans. Yesterday, Penn State also made a hire as well, as they went into the ACC and Duke, and they took their wide receivers coach, Gerald Parker. Parker's going to do the same thing as that he did at Duke, and he's going to replace David Corley, who was released last week. So there's, like I said, there's a lot of movement on the coaching staffs now, as opposed to actually all this happening in early February due to the new National Signing Day. And then there's some rumors that Rice graduate transfer Zach Abercrombie, he's going to look at a few schools and a couple Big Ten schools as well. So he's potentially looking at Penn State, Mississippi State, and Iowa. So we'll see what ends up happening on that end as well. Obviously, we'll keep big-time tabs on that, let you know, because he will be eligible immediately, and most likely he would help either one of those Big Ten teams if he were to transfer to those. On the basketball side, on the hardwood, you're looking at Indiana starting point guard Robert Fanisi. He's still out with a concussion. He's had it for a little while, and concussions, the symptoms, they tend to linger. So it remains to be seen when he'll get back on the hardwood, but that is something that Indiana, they need him. They need him out there, and hopefully that happens within the next few weeks. The Wooden Midseason Award watch list came out yesterday, and the Big Ten was had some players on there. Out of the 25, the Big Ten players, there's a nice little group that showed out for them. You have Purdue's Carson Edwards, Indiana's Romeo Langford, Minnesota's Jordan Humphrey, Nebraska's James Palmer, Michigan State's Cassius Winston, Wisconsin's Ethan Happ, and Michigan's Ignas Brazdeikis. And that's a solid output for the Big Ten. I mean, they've got some high quality basketball players on there. Typically, the Wooden list is right now they're having the top 25 players in the country, so a lot of those guys are going to make all conference teams. They're going to make the big time other watch lists as well, and a lot of them could be potential All-Americans too. So it's a good list for the Big Ten. It's good to see that they're getting a little bit of recognition, although it's just a watch list. They're getting some recognition halfway through the season now. And then Wisconsin also announced that they're going to have a home-and-home matchup with Tennessee, get to start next year. Tennessee is going to get the first crack at it, as they're going to host the first game, and then following up and concluding it in 2020, the Badgers will host the Volunteers. So nice news there, as they have done that previously in the past, but nice to have a solid matchup from Big Ten and SEC school, unlike football where the SEC is afraid to come up. Basketball, they're a little bit more willing to do some work with the Big Ten. So that'll do it. That'll wrap us up for the Big Ten Morning Minutes here on the 11th of January. I've been your host, Michael Chen. I appreciate you listening. Give me a follow on Twitter at MFC2123. Make sure you watch some Big Ten football this week, because it's not on. Just kidding. Big Ten basketball will be all over the place. So some good games going on. Make sure you watch those. And if not, I'll fill you in on everything that's happening off the court come Monday. Have a great weekend, Big Ten fans.